In the elegant circles of 1960s London high society, April Ashley was the very image of grace, a stunning brunette draped in couture, mingling with aristocrats, and capturing the lens of top fashion photographers. But behind her striking beauty was a secret that could shatter everything. Born George Jameson in working-class Liverpool, April had long struggled with her identity. As a young man, she joined the Merchant Navy, endured electroshock therapy, and battled relentless inner turmoil. Nothing made her feel normal until she took a leap of courage. At age 25, she traveled to Casablanca for gender reassignment surgery, one of the first Britons to ever do so. Finally, she said, "I was going to be a real woman inside and out." Reinvented as April Ashley, she quickly became a darling of London's fashion scene. Her aristocratic profile and quiet poise captivated designers and photographers alike. She even landed a small role in the 1962 film The Road to Hong Kong alongside Bing Crosby. Then, the betrayal. In 1961, a jealous friend sold her story to the press, for just £5. Tabloids exploded with the headline, "Model was born a man." Overnight, her contracts vanished. Her film credit was erased. Friends disappeared. Worst of all, her husband, a member of British nobility, sought to annul their marriage in a court case that not only invalidated their union, but denied April legal recognition as a woman. Still, she stood tall. When asked why she risked everything, April said simply, "Living a lie was unbearable." Her fall from grace became a public spectacle. But for many, her bravery made her a tragic heroine. A baron's wife, a top model, a transgender pioneer, all in one. Her life became a living drama, part triumph, part tragedy. And with it, the public's imagination lit up. If someone like April could keep such a secret, who else among the glittering elite might be hiding something just as explosive? In Hollywood's golden age, mystery shimmered just beneath the surface of stardom. But it wasn't a movie star who ignited the first nationwide conversation about gender, it was a former soldier named Christine Jorgensen. Born George Jorgensen Jr., a shy boy from the Bronx, Christine had always felt out of place in her own skin. In 1951, desperate to live authentically, she traveled to Denmark for a groundbreaking surgery that would change everything. When she returned to New York in 1953, the press went wild. Headlines screamed, "XGI becomes blonde beauty." The public was stunned. And captivated. Photographers swarmed her at the airport, ignoring royalty on the same flight. But Christine handled the spectacle with elegance and wit. In nightclubs, she charmed audiences, and once quipped to a curious crowd, "Remember, I didn't cut anything." That bold humor only fueled the fascination. Though Hollywood dangled the promise of fame, she was never fully embraced by the industry. Still, she starred in a film about her own life, and used her rising fame to advocate for transgender people, something nearly unheard of in the 1950s. Reporters prodded. Society judged. But Christine never flinched. Her courage turned her into a symbol, a glamorous face for a deeply misunderstood journey. She didn't just transition her body. She transformed America's imagination. And quietly, behind studio gates, people began to whisper, could others in Hollywood be living the same secret? Christine Jorgensen wasn't just a celebrity, she was a catalyst. A trailblazer who taught the world that identity isn't always visible, but it's always real. In the smoky, underground theaters of 1960s New York, a new kind of star lit up the screen, tall, blonde, and dripping in old Hollywood glamour. Her name was Candy Darling, and she wasn't a studio creation. She made herself. Born James Slattery on Long Island in 1944, Candy was a boy who watched black and white films and saw her future in the shimmering eyes of Jean Harlow and Kim Novak. She practiced their gestures, their voices, their elegance, and then she became them. By her late teens, she had transformed. With platinum hair and a breathy, seductive voice, Candy stepped into the art world as a fully realized woman, and quickly became a muse to Andy Warhol. In his avant-garde films like Flesh and Women in Revolt, she played the femme fatale with a wink and a whisper. Audiences were entranced. Was she real? Was she fantasy? Warhol never answered, he didn't need to. The mystery was the point. Candy's fame extended beyond the underground. Lou Reed immortalized her in his hit song Walk on the Wild Side. Candy came from out on the island, she shaved her legs and then he was a she. At a time when gender nonconformity was taboo, Candy lived hers openly, defiantly. She held court in downtown cabarets and partied with rock stars and poets. Hollywood wouldn't let her in, so she built her own stage. Still, she paid a price. Candy died of lymphoma at just 29. Her final note read, "I'm just so bored with everything." But there was nothing boring about her life. At her funeral, silent film legend Gloria Swanson wept, and saluted Candy's coffin. It was more than goodbye. It was the passing of a torch, from one era's diva to the next. Candy Darling didn't just act like a star, she became one. Her existence blurred the lines between illusion and identity. And in doing so, she made people wonder. How many others in Hollywood might be walking a similar tightrope, between truth and fantasy? Long before gender identity made headlines, Coccinelle was captivating Europe, not with controversy, but with glamour. Born Jacques de Fresnoy in Paris in 1931, she always knew something didn't fit. At 4, she once said, "I knew I was a girl. But no one else could see it." In the vibrant nightlife of 1950s Paris, Jacques transformed into Jacqueline, and took the stage name Coccinelle, meaning ladybug in French. She debuted at Le Carrousel de Paris, a famed cabaret where dazzling transgender performers lit up the stage. Coccinelle stood out, platinum blonde hair, hourglass curves, and a voice that could melt hearts. Audiences were entranced. They came for spectacle but left with admiration. Then came her defining moment. In 1958, Coccinelle traveled to Casablanca to undergo gender reassignment surgery, a secret journey that quietly made her the first French person to do so publicly. But instead of hiding it, she returned to the spotlight, more glamorous than ever. She acted in films, performed to sold-out audiences, and even married, in a church. It was the first known religious wedding for a trans woman in Europe. The public was stunned. But instead of retreating from fame, Coccinelle leaned into it. She wasn't just a performer. She became a movement. Tabloids gasped at her elegance. Admirers flocked to her shows, curious and captivated. For Coccinelle, gender wasn't a scandal, it was a performance, an art. She once said, "Dr. Burer didn't change me. He completed me." Despite threats, laws, and lingering prejudice, Coccinelle thrived, and made the world take notice. Later, she founded an organization to support transgender people, turning fame into advocacy. And in the whispers of old Hollywood, her story stirred questions. If a Parisian cabaret queen could pull off such a breathtaking transformation, could some of Tinseltown's own divas have done the same? With her chiseled cheekbones, clipped Yankee accent, and defiant stare, Katharine Hepburn was never your average leading lady. She wore trousers when other actresses wore lace. She climbed trees, played sports, and spoke her mind, and for decades, that masculine energy sparked endless speculation. In the 1930s, just wearing pants could get a woman labeled as rebellious. But Katharine didn't just wear them, she owned them. When studio executives once hit her slacks to force her into a dress, she marched around the lot in her underwear until they were returned. That wasn't just a protest, it was a statement. Fans adored her boldness. But behind closed doors, Hollywood whispered, was Hepburn hiding something deeper? She had no children, never played the doting wife, and often avoided traditionally feminine roles. More curiously, she called herself Jimmy as a teen and frequently used male pronouns among friends. Her biographer once revealed, Kate often thought of herself as a man. Was she a tomboy who never grew out of it? Or someone quietly performing gender in her own way? She certainly surrounded herself with strong women. Her relationships, though never publicly confirmed, suggested she may have been bisexual. Her decades-long connection with actor Spencer Tracy was positioned as a great Hollywood romance, but they never married, and many believed it was more image than intimacy. Hepburn never addressed the rumors directly, but she didn't shy away either. In a later interview, she quipped, "I've worn trousers so long, I've forgotten how to wear skirts. If that makes me a mythical man, so be it. I don't give a damn." There's no hard evidence that Katharine Hepburn was transgender, but the gender-bending way she lived her life made people wonder. She wasn't pretending to be a man. But she wasn't pretending to be anyone else either. And in that space between masculine and feminine, she created a persona that was both irresistible and unknowable. A legend whose power came not from conformity, but from mystery. I want to be alone. Those 5 words, whispered by Greta Garbo on screen, became a prophecy for her real life, and a cloak for the mystery that still surrounds her. Tall, stoic, with a husky voice and piercing gaze, Garbo was unlike any other star of her time. She didn't flirt with femininity, she transcended it. On screen, she was mesmerizing. Off-screen, she dressed in men's suits, loafers, and button-down shirts. Her closet was filled with tailored jackets and trousers. In letters, she called herself Harry Boy and signed off as a fellow. Hollywood noticed, and so did the gossip mills. Was Garbo simply eccentric? Or was there something more? She never married. She had no children. Her private life was a fortress, but over time, her passionate relationships with women came to light. In her most famous role, Queen Christina, she cross-dresses and kisses another woman, a moment that still stirs conversation. To her fans, she was a goddess. To critics, she was a riddle. And to conspiracy theorists, she was a candidate for one of the most whispered questions in Hollywood: was she born male? There was no evidence. But the aura she exuded, regal, self-contained, almost otherworldly, made people believe anything about her was possible. Her retirement at 36 only fueled the speculation. Some claimed she stepped away before her true identity could be exposed. But maybe the truth was simpler: Garbo was a woman who lived outside the rules. She had no interest in playing society's game, and by refusing to explain herself, she made the world wonder. One columnist said it best: Garbo gives you the feeling she knows a secret the rest of us can't fathom. And maybe that was her genius. By living in ambiguity, Garbo became a legend, a myth of androgynous beauty and silent rebellion. A timeless question mark draped in elegance. When Marlene Dietrich stepped onto the screen in a tuxedo and kissed a woman in the 1930 film Morocco, she didn't just raise eyebrows, she shattered the rules. In one moment, she became Hollywood's original androgynous icon. With her slicked-back hair, smoldering gaze, and low, silky voice, Marlene blurred gender lines long before it was a conversation. She once said, "I am at heart a gentleman." And the world believed her. On red carpets, she wore tailored suits. In private, she fixed cars and boxed. Paris police once threatened to arrest her for wearing trousers in public, but she strutted through the streets anyway, a cigarette dangling from her lips, daring anyone to stop her. Rumors swirled. Was she truly a woman? Was she hiding something? Dietrich never denied, and never confirmed. Instead, she teased the press with contradictions. One day she claimed to be utterly domestic, the next she bragged of affairs with famous women. The mystery became part of her brand. She was openly bisexual in private circles, linked to both men and women, including, reportedly, Greta Garbo. Studio PR spun her style as European sophistication, but behind the scenes, Marlene made people uneasy. She challenged gender, sexuality, even power, and won. The speculation followed her for decades. Was she possibly born male? Most likely not. But in her crisp white suits and defiant smirks, she made the idea seem deliciously plausible. Dietrich understood something few did in that era: gender is performance. And she performed it flawlessly, slipping from tuxedo to feathered gown with the ease of a magician changing costumes. To modern eyes, she looks like a gender rebel ahead of her time. To her audience, she was intoxicating. To Hollywood? A problem they couldn't solve, but couldn't stop watching. Marlene Dietrich wasn't just a movie star. She was a provocation. A myth. A message stitched into satin and silk. You don't have to choose. You can be both. Or neither. Or something entirely your own. With her piercing eyes, sculpted cheekbones, and steely presence, Joan Crawford was one of classic Hollywood's most commanding figures. She clawed her way from poverty to Oscar-winning stardom, but for decades, whispers followed in her shadow. Was Joan hiding something? Something far bigger than a fake birth date or a few plastic surgeries. She was born Lucille LeSueur in Texas and reinvented herself completely. Even her name was chosen by a studio contest. In her early career as a chorus girl, she occasionally danced in male drag, a forgotten footnote that later fed a wilder theory. What if Joan Crawford had been born male? There was no proof. But there was plenty of intrigue. She was athletic, broad-shouldered, and favored padded dresses that critics said only emphasized her strength. She married 4 times, yet had no biological children, only adoptions. In a pre-IVF era, that fact sparked quiet rumors. Her ultra-controlled image, her refusal to be vulnerable, her rumored affairs with women, all added to the mystique. One of the most persistent stories involved a fling with Marilyn Monroe. Monroe reportedly laughed it off, but the tale never really died. Nor did Joan's ties to Hollywood's secret, sewing circle, of bisexual and lesbian actresses. Could it have been possible that a man reinvented as a woman, not just survived in Hollywood, but dominated it? It sounds like fiction. But Crawford's story often felt like fiction. She once said, "If you want to see the girl next door, go next door. I'm playing abroad." She cultivated control, power, and allure, not softness. Even her daughter's infamous memoir, Mommy Dearest, painted her as almost frighteningly masculine in energy. Joan Crawford wasn't just a screen legend, she was a fortress. And the more she kept the world out, the more it speculated about what she was protecting. True or not, the rumor that Joan had something to hide became part of her legend. In the House of Hollywood Illusions, Joan was the ultimate architect, a woman who may have remade herself so completely, people began to question what she started as. Few actresses wore strength like armor the way Barbara Stanwyck did. Whether playing a sultry con artist or a no-nonsense rancher, she radiated confidence and independence. But with that commanding presence came persistent, unshakable rumors. Could Barbara have been born male? She was tough, athletic, and intensely private. Born Ruby Stevens in Brooklyn, orphaned young, and raised in foster homes, she grew up fighting for survival. By 15, she was a chorus girl. And, according to lore, she once disguised herself as a boy to sneak into speakeasies, a detail that conspiracy theorists later clung to. She never had biological children, rarely spoke of her love life, and divorced twice. In a time when women were expected to soften for the spotlight, Barbara leaned in the opposite direction, tailored suits, minimal makeup, a husky voice, and a nickname, Missy, that felt more tomboy than glamour girl. Insiders whispered about her friendships with women like actress Barbara Pepper, hinting at romantic undertones. She was part of the so-called Lavender Network, a web of closeted queer Hollywood stars. But while many played the game of appearances, Stanwyck never tried to be anyone but herself, and that only fueled the speculation. One cruel rumor suggested she wore padded hips and chest prosthetics, a baseless claim, but one that stuck. Another pointed to her muscular legs and equestrian lifestyle as too masculine. Gossip mongers began to ask, was she hiding in plain sight? There's no evidence Barbara Stanwyck was transgender. But she embodied a type of woman rarely seen then, one who didn't need a man's permission, affection, or validation. In one interview, she said, if being masculine means knowing what I want and going after it, I'll take it. That quote alone could have been written by any gender trailblazer. Barbara didn't just bend the rules. She ignored them. And in doing so, she gave life to one of Hollywood's most persistent and fascinating questions. Was she simply ahead of her time, or something altogether different? If Hollywood had a high priestess of scandal, it was Tallulah Bankhead. With her smoky voice, razor wit, and refusal to follow any rule, she left a trail of dropped jaws and broken taboos wherever she went. Born in Alabama but raised by Broadway, Tallulah became a sensation on both stage and screen, not just for her acting, but for her audacity. She bragged about sleeping with both men and women. She wore suits to formal events, dove naked into party pools, and called herself an ambisextrous siren with a throaty laugh. Naturally, whispers followed. Some said her deep voice and flamboyant masculinity were signs. Others claimed her fertility issues were a cover, that she was, in fact, not a biological woman at all. The rumors were outrageous, and likely untrue. But if Tallulah heard them, she would have poured a drink and laughed even louder. In private, playwright Tennessee Williams once called her an anatomical epicene. A poetic way of saying she embodied both masculine and feminine traits. And she didn't just embody them, she reveled in them. At a time when Hollywood forced women into neat boxes, Tallulah smashed them. She cross-dressed for fun, hosted drag-themed parties, and openly flirted with Marlene Dietrich at dinner tables. She played queer-coded roles even as the Hays Code tried to erase them. She was a walking contradiction, a Southern belle with a sailor's mouth, a sex symbol who mocked sex, a woman who didn't care whether the world saw her as one. In the world of speculation this series explores, Tallulah Bankhead may be the least likely to be secretly born male, and yet, the most spiritually aligned with the idea of gender freedom. Because what she taught us was simple. You don't need to fit any label to be unforgettable. You just need to be unapologetically you.